Okay, so we're recording now?
You're live.
Okay, cool. All right, well, let's call this meeting to order. I think that Anton will probably pop in here in a little bit, or if we heard from him saying that he's not coming. No?
Haven't heard yet.
Okay, so let's go through a roll call here for our remote meeting. So I'll just go down the list that I've got. We've got City Attorney Chris Hood. We've got Hayden Hinchman, who's on our technology instead of Patrick. So pretty exciting. We've got Councilor Kelly Swearingen. We've got City Finance Director Kim Dunsmore. Mary Somnus is here to speak with us on one of the issues that we have for the EDA. Mike Roth, City Administrator. We've got Craig Schulte, who comes up as Super America number 4746, which is kind of funny, but that works. And then Councilor Tim Kennedy. So that's our roll call. And and then we'll move along to open forum. I have an open forum that I would like to read. And then if any of the other councilors have anything that they have received that is meant for the public forum, then you have that. You can go ahead and read that as well. So I have an email that is from Ann Bratas, who's a resident here in the city. It says this: Dear Mayor and City Council, please forgive the delay. I have a funeral program due Saturdays. Printers now. Okay, so we don't need to read that. To further the practice of inclusive civic engagement and city participation in the American vote, irrespective of party or write-in candidate, Minnesota Children's Press respectfully requests a permit to erect a staffed conversation kiosk and public letter writing table and vision board on the city park in front of the library for 2 hours every day during this week, Minnesota Women's Vote Week. Open to all, it honors the historic actions of the Minnesota legislature on September 8th, 1919, that ratified the 19th Amendment. Sunday, September 13 would be the last day. We regret we did not ask permission sooner. As you see from the attached files, we have held public pop-up programming on the library lawn without a permit since 2018 for many more days and hours than just 1 week. We were not aware that a time-limited, radically welcomely temporary public creative presence required a permit. In particular, this year, with our partners Joan Drury and the Grand Marais Library, we have been celebrating women's vote all of 2020. Our intent here is purely to strengthen civic engagement and encourage people to safely vote in every election. We are happy to pay a permit fee on behalf of the sponsoring agency, the Grand Marais-based Minnesota Children's Press 501c3 charity that helps children write, illustrate, and publish books. Thank you for your time and attention. Signed, Ann Bratas. And she has attached a number of photos of activities that have been put on with that. So that is the public comment that she has. Mike, do you have any direction for us about, have they submitted like an actual permit application? Is this something that we should be acting on at a later date, or how would we proceed with something like this?
Well, it looks like kind of a current event sort of request, so I don't think it'll be relevant at a later date. The most important action in approving a permit would be your permission. So I think if you're interested in talking about it tonight, that's all you would need to do is say yes or no.
Okay, so let's add that to the agenda. We can add that to the bottom of the agenda, and then we can have a conversation about that. Does that sound all right to everybody? Cool. Anybody else have anything for the open forum? Kelly? Oh, okay.
No, I just figured I'd better say yes. We're all nodding, but the public maybe doesn't hear that. So
Right,
I'm like,
exactly.
I'm going to add that to the agenda.
Affirmative. Okay, so then hearing no further public comment, we'll close the open forum, move on to the consent agenda. So the consent agenda has a typical 3 items on there, but there's also a big one on there, the FEMA Assistance to Firefighters Grant for SCBA, self-contained breathing apparatus equipment. So would anyone like to pull anything for conversation out of the consent agenda? Or if not, I would entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented.
Can we pull that grant just to talk about it a little bit because it was not all that they hoped for? Or are we just approving the receipt of that money?
Yeah, it's largely just approving the receipt of it.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay, then I'm good.
Okay.
You know, I had one item I wanted to add to the agenda, and this was regarding our conversation at our last meeting about the Passion Pit Task Force. The county commissioners met yesterday and appointed a commissioner to serve on that, and they're asking that the city, appoint the city representative to that task force. I know Kelly, you had volunteered at the last meeting, and we didn't take any action on that. So, we should put that on the agenda or have a conversation about that.
Okay, that should work. Can add that to the agenda. So with those changes, is there a motion to approve the consent agenda as present or as amended?
I'll make that motion.
Okay, so there's a motion. Is there a second?
I will second that.
Motion and a second. All right, we'll go through a roll call vote here. Starting at the top. Top for me, I guess, that is, however it comes up. Councilor Swearingen, your vote.
Aye.
Councilor Schulte, your vote.
Aye.
Councilor Kennedy, your vote.
Aye.
And my vote is an aye as well. Consent agenda carries. So I don't know if there's room to talk a little bit about the FEMA grant now, but that's $83,000 we got for equipment, which is pretty awesome. So I'm really, really grateful for that. I know they would have liked to get more, but it's always great for our little fire department when we can get great equipment like that. So that's really great.
They received $65,600, so that's the actual grant amount. The ask was for 80.
Oh, I see.
Change.
Must have read that one wrong then.
We haven't received an explanation as to why there was a different amount that was granted, but the amount that was granted is going to serve the needs that they've got. They've already made some improvements to some of the equipment that they were planning on replacing, and they won't need to. So they believe they'll be able to replace all the SCBA equipment that they asked for in the grant with this amount of money.
Okay. Cool. That's good clarification. Thanks, Mike. Okay, so moving on, the first thing that we have on our agenda for items is a planning commission report. So we've got 2 resolutions and one request for an ordinance change in this as well. So moving right along, sorry, I got to get to the right page here. The first one that we have is a variance from Hamilton Habitat. So this is a request for a variance from a side yard setback on a property being developed in the R2 zone. The request was, or the Planning and Zoning Commission is thinking about changing the R2 zone. So it seems like a lot of the setback situations maybe are not exactly applicable, but I mean they are because it currently is. But Tim, it seems like there was definitely a lot of consensus on this one. You want to explain that a little bit more? Oh, you're muted, Tim. There you go.
Yeah, the issue is that in the R2 zone district, there's a requirement for a 25-foot minimum side yard setback. And if you're familiar with the lot, it's the property across the street from the law enforcement center. If you've driven by, they've already prepared a pad for the site development. And the maps that you have included in your packet show some of the challenges and difficulties with that lot. It's mostly a wetland, and they're going to have to mitigate some of that wetland to actually find and get a building site that's going to be workable. But they're asking for a setback of 10 feet from that property line, which you're right, Jay, that the R2 district standards, when we deal with the zoning ordinance amendments that we've been contemplating for the last year, those likely will change. Obviously, that's not the case right now, but they very well could change. This property does butt up to the business park on that side lot. It's all wooded and it continues to be wetland beyond that property line. The Planning Commission held a public hearing. There were no comments received. The idea is that this really is something that makes a lot of sense. It, provides a lot that would be able to be built for residential purposes. And I think that after all the conversation at the Planning Commission, everybody felt that this was really a good choice for development of that property.
Okay. Does anybody on the council, do you have any conversation or any questions about this variance request?
I don't have any questions, but I do think, even though we're looking to change things, I don't want the decision, or for me, I'm not making a decision based on the fact that we're moving from R2 to R1, because currently we have R2, R2. If we don't change things for 6 months, a year, 5 years, hopefully we do, obviously, before that, but based upon what we're doing, I still think that with the area that they're in, with the obviously have with water over there, I'm in favor of this. It's not a built up area yet, so hopefully it doesn't cause issues as we go forward, but I just want to base it upon the zone that they're in, not that when we switch it to. So I want to make people clear on that.
Yeah, just to respond to that, Kelly, really the conversation at the Planning Commission, bring that factor in as a consideration for recommending the variance. It really was based on the situation at hand and the current zoning requirements.
Thanks for the clarification, Tim.
I think it's worth pointing out that one of the findings that's in the resolution states conformance to the R1 standards for a single family home developed in a residential zone is reasonable. So you may need to decide whether or not that is something you're willing to find if that's your position. Because that kind of skirts the issue of, is this because of R1 or is this only relevant to R2?
That's a good point. To have that written into the resolution as R1 rather than R2, it seems to me that the reality we're dealing with this particular property is that whether that is R1 or R2, it would conform with either of those, with either of the uses for those places, as far as the request for a side lot variance would go. So I don't have a huge issue with that, but I do think that, the devil is in the details. That might be something that we should take into consideration if we want that to read R2 or if we want that to read something else, but then we'd have to go back to the Planning and Zoning Commission to have them have that finding, wouldn't we?
No, you can have your own findings in the resolution. The resolution's your action that includes your findings. Theirs is just a recommendation. And I suspect that they would have made that finding regardless of the previous conversation about rezoning the property, and that this piece of property, even though it's zoned R2, that it was reasonable to use the R1 standards based on the way it's being developed and based on the surrounding properties and the way that they're developed. But that's something for you to consider.
Okay, Council, do you have any thoughts on that? So the concept is, do we feel comfortable with a finding in the resolution that reads, well, it says here, The proposal seeks to use the property in a reasonable manner not permitted by the zoning ordinance. And it says conformance to the R1 standards for a single family home developed in a residential zone is reasonable. So that's what the finding actually reads. Is that good enough for the council? Does that summarize what we believe about this one? Kind of a tricky question.
I'd rather have it to the R2 because I don't want to leave loopholes for us moving forward that somebody says, hey, this is what you did here for someone. Now you're having a problem with us. I really would like to stay within the parameters that we currently have and list it as such. I don't want somebody to come back at us later on and say, you did this before, why can't you do it again? You know, it kind of sets an example. So I don't know what other people think.
Tim,
Yeah,
go ahead.
Well, my thinking is kind of along with Kelly there. You know, we're granting a variance the way it is zoned right now today because of condition of the land and where the building needs to be or can only be, and because it butts up to undeveloped business park land right now that still has wetlands going further into that space. I don't have a problem with granting this variance based on the fact that we're granting it the way the zoning is today. That's how I feel about it. I think making it sound like it's R1 right now is probably not what we should be doing until we're done with our zoning changing. But
Yep. Okay.
that's how I feel about it.
Thanks, Craig.
Yeah, I don't have any disagreement with that. I really think that what the planning commission was saying that the R1, not the R1, single family home being built in a multiple family district, those R2 standards were designed to really accommodate larger scale developments, multiple family structures. And I think considering that it's a single family home probably was the maybe more of a factor rather than that it's an R1 type property. I mean, it's not R1 zoning, we knew that. And I think because it's going to just be a single family home, that probably has more of an impact than the question of whether it's R1. So maybe we could just change that, the language to say that because it's a single family home in a multiple family district, that it fits and conforms, in this situation.
I think it does say that, but if the use of the R1 term is confusing at all, or there's a potential for it to be confusing, you could change it to say a 10-foot side yard setback for a single family home developed in a residential zone is reasonable. And then that doesn't have that anymore. And it's worth noting, though, that if it was R1 or we were treating it like it was R1, they wouldn't need a variance at all. So the fact that we're going through this process and having to make findings is, I think, should be showing people pretty clearly that this is still R2 and that we're treating it like it's R2.
Yep. I would agree with both of those statements. So I if we summarize it down to the actual brass tacks of what we're talking about, then we're talking about the 10-foot side yard setback. Putting that into that finding and removing the conversation about R1 altogether seems like it would solve the problem. Does that seem like that works for everybody?
I would be happy with that.
Craig?
I would make the motion that we approve the request. Excuse me here. Approve the request with the change to the language as Mike specified.
Okay, so there's a motion for resolution 2020-07 as amended. Is there a second for that?
I will make that second.
All right, there's a second. Any further conversation?
I have a question. Well, it's somewhat related to this, but it's more related to that whole business park. Tim, if you remember few years ago when I was on the planning commission and you were on the planning commission, we had a developer come before us who wanted to develop that land? Do you remember that?
Yeah,
They were told they couldn't develop it. They couldn't build any dwellings of homes on any part of that business park land. What was changed between then and now that allows this? Because if I remember rightly, it had something to do with the monies that were used to develop that strictly as a business park. Did somebody forgive that language in that
well, this parcel,
development?
this parcel is not part of the business park. This parcel is
No,
private.
I know, but isn't this the same parcel that Chris Norman was looking at developing across from the sheriff's department there?
There were some conversations about developing the parcel that is below the city ditch that is part of the business park. I don't recall a conversation that was related to this property.
Yeah. Well, I know we got a conditional use permit, but then nobody from the EDA was at the meeting, and then we kind of got side hit by it. We didn't really realize that that this type of development couldn't exist in the business park. So I'm just asking that question. If that got changed, it may not apply to this particular, but as a business park as a whole, now is that something that's available to the business park? I don't know. I'm just asking that question. Mike, you might know something.
Yeah, that hasn't changed. But the strings that are attached to money, that money was used to improve the business park utilities and road. This lot and the lot that's above it that you're referring to were not improved by that money. So the Gunflint Trail reconstruction in 2001 or 2000, the first phase of that built that chunk of Gunflint Trail and water and sewer improvements. And we did not have any grant money that was attached to those improvements. So there are no strings attached to it. And that's why the EDA has talked about developing that for an assisted living site a couple of times now, and including we're currently in the middle of talking about us developing it that way.
Okay.
Cool. Any other conversation? Any other comment? Okay, hearing none, we'll bring this one to a vote. So this is resolution 2020-07 for the Hamilton variance. Councilor Swearingen, your vote.
Aye.
Councilor Schulte, your vote.
Aye.
Councilor Kennedy, your vote.
Aye.
And I am an aye as well. The resolution carries. So that'll be good. See that one going. So the second one is a conversation about single unit residence and as part of a lodging commercial development lot. So there's a lot of stuff going on here, and this is the lot that's right on the corner of the Gunflint and Highway 61, if I'm correct. And so looks like the process that went through, there was a question about the process, about the proposal, but no comments. And it seemed in line with the stipulations for the CI, the Commercial Industrial District. So that one carried. So, but Tim, I wonder if you can talk a little bit more in detail about this, because it seemed like there were some questions about the residents being located here as well, brought up by Commissioner Hawkins. So I don't know if you want to jump into that one and explain kind of what it is. I mean, the drawing of it shows a woodworking studio with some developed gardens and some small cabins, as well as a single family residence on the property. So go for it.
Yeah, I mean, really what you see on the drawing is the representation of, some lodging units, a space for some commercial activity, and then a residence for the owner manager of the property. And I think it was Commissioner Hawkins that raised the question about whether or not somebody needed to be a manager or owner or resident to be a resident of that property. And it really kind of was kind of a conversation really really didn't result in much other than that. I think all the commissioners felt that a residential use established with a business certainly is appropriate, and something that's already done in, certainly multiple locations as you go west of town. Lodging properties have residents, I think almost every one of them has a residence on their property, and really after I think some conversation about just the lodging aspect of it, like the Planning Commission felt comfortable in granting and recommending the approval of this conditional use permit.
Okay. Any other counselors have any questions or comments on this request?
Well, I thought this was kind of convoluted a little bit in some of the part of the application and words used. Like when we, under the commission discussion and findings, it talked about the permits required for the residential unit and that the other proposed uses are allowed permitted by the ordinance. Then a little bit beyond that, it talks about other commissioners remarked that the additional residential unit was desired, which I think must be where he's talking about the residential studio, the 2-story, whether or not it was related to the business. And in his application, he talks about a whole lot of different things. And I think the drawing it's showing those cabins, which it sounds like he's wanting to have vacation rentals there. One of the things in his application in number 3, facts showing the use will not impede the normal orderly development, is that is that where it is? Or no, I'm sorry, trying to find this quickly. He talks about the city encouraging, it's in number 1, facts showing the use conforms to the land and comprehensive plan. City shows interest in more vacation rental units. I don't feel that we've ever made that statement or led the public to believe that we are for or against increasing, decreasing. We obviously talk about our housing issues, but I felt like this was a bit convoluted, and where is he really going to go with this? Are we just approving the 2-story building, or are we approving all uses of that property if he decides to build? And I think he had 4 small cabins on that property in the picture. So I'm wondering what it is exactly we're being asked to.
The conditional use would be for the residential use of the property. The other uses, the lodging uses and studio use, are permitted uses which don't require any planning commission or city action to go ahead with. So he could put in four lodging units. He could put in 8 lodging units, and that's an allowable use on that property. He'd have to get a permit for those, but there's no planning commission or council approval in that process.
So it's only for the residents.
We're only taking action on his request to have a residence as part of this development.
Right, as a conditional use, yeah.
And that's because it's in a commercial service use zoned area.
Mm-hmm.
That district requires residences to be a conditional use be granted for those residences.
Yep,
So
but
the other home was gone before. How did that other house get in there? It just got grandfathered when it was Clifford Specs?
oh, you mean before it was taken down?
You know,
Yeah,
zoning didn't exist at all until 1971, so my
Right.
suspicion is that house probably got built before zoning was even an issue.
well, yeah, it was there before that.
Yeah.
Okay,
So basically, the other uses that they're talking about, the lodging and the studio, woodworking studio situation, that's all allowed by the CI service commercial industrial zone. So the residence is what the conditional use applies to directly.
Hmm.
So that's what we've got there. Any further discussion on that, or any motions for considerations for motions on that one?
so I'm sorry, guys, I'm trying to wrap my head around all this. So if he builds cabins there that he rents out, vacation rental, short-term, whatever, those don't need a permit in the commercial area? I mean, I see those as being different than an actual, I guess maybe it's not, maybe it is.
They need a, Kelly, they need a land use permit, but they don't need any special approval to grant that permit, provided they meet all the requirements of the ordinance.
Okay. All right. Thanks for letting me talk it through, guys.
It does us all well to be going over this stuff a lot. Any thoughts? Any other thoughts on this? Any other considerations? We do have a resolution prepared, 2020-08. Might looking through the criteria and the findings on this, I don't think that there's anything as controversial as comments on R1, R2. Basically, just saying that we've got allowed conditional uses. We've got residential uses to the property north and south, and further to the east. And the residence supports the commercial development of the lot, which is part of the ordinance as well. And the residence supports a desirable commercial development on that area. So it seems like all of those are kind of have it pretty much nailed down. If there isn't any further conversation, I would entertain a motion. If there is no motion, we can move on. So what do we think here?
Does that zone go all the way out to the city limits then?
Commercial industrial?
That C1?
I believe so.
Right
Yes
out to
and no, it depends on what side of the highway you're on. So,
Well, on the north side, to the city limits, which is what, State Garage roughly?
yeah, that's all C1 zone.
That's all C1,
Yeah.
okay. All right, that's fine, thank you.
Yeah, if there's no other conversation, I would make the motion to approve the resolution.
Okay, there's a motion. Is there a second for that motion?
I'll second that.
Okay, there we go. Motion and a second. Any further discussion on this? Hearing none. Counselor Swearingen, your vote?
Aye.
Counselor Schulte, your vote?
Aye.
Counselor Kennedy, your vote?
Aye.
And I am an aye as well. That resolution carries. So then we'll move along to the final one, which is why we have Mary Somnus on. So this is talking about the use of, or putting in an additional accepted use, I suppose is the way to put that, in the business development area zone. And that would be for a use that we're calling services. So I think that I probably should just turn this one over to Mary to explain what we're getting at here. I know that there's a person in the community who wants to develop an area in the business development park for a youth center, and that is not currently an accepted use for the business development park. I know there's certainly some conversations to have about the use of that property in there, but this is what we have defined as services. Establishments primarily engaged in providing assistance as opposed to products to individuals, business, industry, government, and other enterprises, personal business, repair and amusement services, health, legal, engineering, and other professional services, educational services, membership organizations, and other miscellaneous services. So I think there's two ways we can do this. So we've got Tim, who was there at the, well, I guess both you guys were there at the planning and zoning meeting to discuss how the conversation went on the Planning and Zoning Commission and the purpose for this request. So I don't know who wants to take it away, but either Mary or Tim.
Yeah, I'll just start it out, and Mary, maybe you can join in. I mean, this obviously was initiated through the EDA. So, the request basically is to make a change to the zoning ordinance, in what is allowed as a permitted use, to add the term services as another type of broad category of uses that could be allowed in the business park. We already have some pretty broad categories already in the existing permitted uses that are allowed in the business park, but there was a request that came to the EDA, which was a service type use that wasn't allowed as a result of the current permitted uses, and the EDA has made this request to amend the allowable permitted uses. And Mary, maybe you can talk a little bit about the conformance to the uses that the EDA has in their guidelines in terms of the uses that you would allow in the business park. And then maybe we can have the conversation about what transpired at the Planning Commission meeting.
Yeah, thanks, Tim. So what happened as we reviewed this request was we discovered there is a difference in the language of the declaration of covenants for the business park, which would allow this particular project, but the zoning ordinance does not allow it. And so that is why we went to the Planning Commission to request that the ordinance be changed so that our documentation matches. I think the broad category of services helps us to be able to continue to sell those properties. We've been doing a pretty good job over the last 5 years and selling lots. And, I think I don't know if this came up at the Planning Commission, but we actually have a couple of businesses in there that really are services that don't manufacture or offer products. So in fact, almost all of them could be looked at that way. So I think it just is a really good move to add this word services to the zoning to clean up all of those kinds of questions that we have there.
Mary, do you have any, so what you're saying is that the covenants that were drawn up for the business development park itself claim services, as I read that chunk of allowable services that exists in the covenants for the business development park in their own covenants for that area, but not in the city ordinance. That's
it's
what
not exactly the same. Those covenants were created way before I got here, but there are some uses that are described particularly. So this is the part of the covenants that addresses the lots that are adjacent to the Gunflint Trail, that are on the outside perimeter of the business park, access right off of the trail, off the Gunflint, not up in the interior. And I suppose the vision was that those lots would be visible and they would be easily accessible from the street rather than going up into the business park. I don't know, Mike, if you were here when all that happened, if you have any background. This particular use is named as allowable in the covenants as a childcare is allowed in the covenants. But we brought forward the recommendation to add services just so, because we don't know what other kinds of things are going to come forward in the future, and rather than have to change the ordinance one by one or, you know, on a case by case, let's address the whole thing in a comprehensive way to enable us, again, to continue to sell those lots and get them occupied.
So that we don't have an example of it, of the covenants. I think it's what they're trying to do, what Mr. Shannon's looking to do is very needed and a wonderful thing. But I want to make sure that this really fits in with what the intention was, and the EDA and the business park is all supported, and I think Stacy brought this up as well, I saw in the notes, by taxpayer dollars. So I feel like we're kind of getting asked that, hey, something else came along, we can sell a lot. The city just needs to change their language. And I think we need to, I feel like I haven't had enough time to really look at this. I think we need to dig a little deeper to make sure that, you know, we get our packet on Thursday, it's Labor Day weekend, we're obviously not going to get a lot done on this, and now we're being asked on Wednesday night to make a decision. And I really feel like we need to do a little bit more work before we just say, yes, sure, no problem.
On that topic, or on that note, I recall having conversations when we were working to rezone those lots on the west side of the park to be residential commercial, that there was some significant concern from the people who already had lots developed in the park, saying, or at least expressing some concern about the fact that, you know, we drive really big trucks around here all the time, and not saying that we're not going to be safe, but, you know, we got to be careful what kind of uses we put up there so that we make sure that they're all compatible. I'm not sure which lot Mr. Shannon is looking at, and I agree with Kelly that this is something that I think is a really great idea. And I'm also, yeah, I've got questions about that stuff as well. And also about what the potential changes in the atmosphere up there, the environment up there, you know, I'm not thinking that there's going to be a mass influx of nonprofit organizations to buy lots up there and redevelop their headquarters up there. But is that something that we, the council and the EDA, see as potentially the right fit for that property or that area? And that, I don't say that as because I think one way or the other. I say that because I think that's a question we need to ask. So those are some things to think about.
Yeah, one of the things I think to consider too is the types of uses that currently exist in the business park that, you know, in my mind seem to fall better under the classification of a service than they do under other categories of permitted uses in the business park. And you think about the towing service that's there, or the chiropractor, or not the chiropractor, but the veterinary service that's there, the pumping plant, you know, that PD has, you know, it's a septic service type business. There's not a manufacturing component to that. Doesn't seem to fall under other categories. And yeah, I mean, I don't see the category of services per se being something that we would want to not include in the business park. And I guess we almost have already done that by allowing the uses that have currently taken place there. I think the whole business of the particular type of service that is being proposed right now kind of clouds the question about whether or not services in general should be an allowable use in the business park. I mean, personally, I think, you know, the proposal for a youth center fits with other types of uses that we've talked about in that area of the business park, and that is studio homes where people can have artist residence and studio, some type of activity that allows that. We already have a residence at the veterinary clinic. We have a church in the business park, and it's kind of when we talk about business park, it's not certainly not the type of business park that I would have envisioned from when we first had conversations, but it's taking a far different form and shape than that. I mean, the Planning Commission, after the conversations and consideration, did vote to approve the amendment to the ordinance to include services, and I think it was based on the fact that it seemed fitting for the types of activities that were currently allowed in the business park and were already taking place.
That makes me feel a lot better about it, Tim, just hearing that explanation. And actually thinking about the number of things in the business park that already meet that criteria that we're talking about right now. I just remember talking to two of the business owners up there in the park, and them having serious concerns about having varied uses up there. But it seems like that's what's happening anyway. So any other thoughts on this? So we're looking at, for this one, we're looking at an ordinance as well. So this would be an ordinance modification. We'd have a first reading of this tonight, and then we would have a second reading where then it would go into effect after our next meeting, just to make sure we're on the same page about that. So Mike, looked like you had something, or Kelly, Mike?
Yeah.
Kelly? There you go.
So to the point of this being supported publicly, that is well taken. Think about if we don't sell this lot to anyone, the special assessment that's paying for the water and sewer that was constructed for this will continue to be paid by county and city property taxes. And the use, the maintenance of those water and sewer pipes will continue to be paid by other ratepayers. If we do sell this property, irrespective of whether they pay property taxes, the sale will support the bond that was used to pay for the construction of the water and sewer. The use of the water and sewer then will be paid with rates. There could potentially be employment that's created as well. So it seems to me, even if we're concerned about this being supported with public dollars, that it being sold for actual cash, then developed and used by anyone, is a better situation than it not being sold and the EDA continuing to own it and continuing to pay the special assessment for the water and sewer with city and county property taxes.
So then are we basically saying that from the time the business park was built and opened with lots for sale, because there's businesses there that are different than what we had planned or thought there would be, we're changing with the structure of how we do it because it isn't what we had originally planned? And at least if it feels kind of like we're saying then that if we're selling this lot, at least somebody else isn't, whether it's nonprofit or not, then the city taxpayers and those in the EDA park are not continuing to pay those special assessments. I don't like the feel of that either. I would rather that we base our decision, on facts and what's happened, what we have there. Obviously, we're saying these services have changed. Well, when a person states services, the service industry, that can be a restaurant, it can be a barbershop. Obviously, what Katie Greshik does is a service to members of our community and our county. I see those existing, but I'm not sure what was the EDA's intent when they built it then? Were we looking at strip malls to have little shops, barbershops, hair salons, spas, and that didn't happen, so now we're just moving on to other things, so we need to change language to fit that? And then if it's part of an ordinance, we're currently working on our ordinances, wouldn't that be part of it as we're looking at things?
I think there's a couple of questions here. Mary?
If I may, those kind of retail uses that you mentioned, Kelly, like a little strip mall or something, those are the uses that are allowed for the lots that are facing the Gunflint Trail. That's exactly what the intent was for those street-facing lots. So those lots have different uses in the covenants, but again, not in the zoning, I believe, if that's right, Mike?
Yeah, and I think that's important to revisit that. The services, the terminology and the definition that is included in your packet, that's our language. That's in our zoning ordinance right now, that definition. And we created that definition a dozen or so years ago when we started changing from what was the downtown C1 zoning that had about 70 different things listed as permitted principal uses. And we changed that style of zoning ordinance to a short list that included broader categories, so retail and services and some of those other things that didn't exist in the zoning ordinance as definitions before were added. But we didn't go through and change all of the zones and all of the lists of uses at that time. The BDA zoning, I'm not sure when it was originally created. It could have been the 80s. It was certainly not later than the 90s when that list was actually created. And what the vision was for the park when that was created is certainly not the same as what the EDA's current vision for the park is. And I think that you see the results of the EDA's management of it in the types of businesses they're selling to, but also in what they've written in their covenants and restrictions. And we don't have the same list as them, but we've asked them to do this management on our behalf. And so now the question is, do you want to change our ordinance to match what style that they're trying to get into the business park and have been for some time? Or is there something about that change that is a concern that needs to be revisited or adjusted?
I keep thinking about, the future, what the future of the business park looks like, not so much as, as far as the dollars and cents of who pays what and for how long, but what's a sustainable model for the business park supporting business and having that business development space be properly utilized in the city of Grand Marais, and for that, and understanding what's already there. I do have some concerns, Mary, about the purpose of that strip of properties that's right along the Gunflint. There's a reason why they made those different, made the covenants that guide those different than the whole rest of it. And that's something that's really the only tripping point that I have on this whole conversation. It seems like applying those rules to the entire business park wasn't done for a reason at the very beginning. And so that's my only hang up on it. Although I do acknowledge that services as defined by this ordinance change is a pretty wide variety of things, and understanding that those uses would be compatible with the other industrial type uses that we have up there is something that I'm not completely certain about. So I also feel like that space can be developed for a lot of different things. So I guess, you know, I understand both sides of it. I would lean towards the development of things rather than not, but that's me. So any other thoughts on this?
We talk a little bit about, you know, the historical changes, and yeah, there have been significant changes since that business park was first envisioned. And you know, I remember during the early days, even before it became an officially created business park, that there were reservation agreements that I think filled maybe 20 of the 30 some lots in the business park that were mostly local contractors, road contractors, and others that had heavy equipment. And you know, those lots in the back part of the park were really all designed to accommodate and give a place for those business owners to actually house their equipment and have warehouses and such. And then the economic decline happened, and pretty much none of those businesses ended up performing on their reservation agreements. And unfortunately, the park had gone ahead and made decisions, and here we are today. You know, there were some, I think, some pretty hard times, and of course we all know the struggles that we've had over the years to try to get occupancy in the park. And you know, we have some good businesses in there. You know, they're paying taxes, they're providing services, they're, you know, employing people. You know, it's beginning to work. I mean, it's still, there's a long ways to go to fill that place up, but you know, by allowing services, we also allow one other option in types of businesses that would be able to be built and occupy the business park. And I don't think it's a stretch to consider services as another type of permitted use. You know, again, like I said before, number of the uses that are already there, to me, are service type activities already that were somehow given the green light under some other reading of the definitions that we already have on the books. But in my mind, they more clearly fall under a service type use than anything else.
That's kind of my take on the future of the business park too, is that I don't think we're going to lose any of those you know, industrial contractor type people who are going to look at buying a lot up there by having services put in there as well. And that, I might be wrong in that, but that's my take on it. You know, to say opening the door a little bit wider, I don't think that's going to necessarily dissuade any of those more commercial and actual commercial industrial, like builders and excavators and things like that, from entertaining those properties if they're looking for a property to expand to. So that's my take on it. Does anybody else have any further thoughts on this? I mean, we've got this ordinance on the agenda, and it's something that, you know, Kelly, you're saying maybe we need to take a little bit more of a look at this. You know, we've got a number of options here. One of the things we can do is we can continue talking about it and see if we can come to a resolution tonight. We can also say, hey, let's take a look at those covenants that are for the different areas of the BDA zone, and then bring it back next meeting, or we can say, well, I guess it would probably be the first thing, you know, just like the first thing I said, is that if we say that we don't think there should be a change, then we can just abandon it. So what are your thoughts on that? And do we have any, you know, any strong feelings about how to move forward on this? Because I feel like we're starting to get to a point where we've pretty much all said our bits on this, and I don't know if we're not prepared to make a call on this, then I think we should we should say so and spend a little bit more time researching and then come back to it. Otherwise, if we are, then we can, move forward. Kelly?
Well, I'm the one I think probably I feel uncomfortable with it, with the short notice and in this information. I feel like I need to think about it a little bit more, and I feel like I need to look into some things. Again, not like there's going to be a huge knock at the door tomorrow if we pass this of nonprofits or anything else happening, but is this really fitting in with what the intention was? Is having a youth center not really a service? Does it match up with being in with a towing company and match up with a veterinary clinic and the location of it all? I don't know how I define that as a service exactly. And again, I think it is so needed here, but I don't want to make a decision based upon the fact that, gee, we need it, so let's just do it. And, oh, well, better to ask for forgiveness than permission. I'd rather do a little bit more, think about it a little bit more, do a little bit more digging. If Mary could get us some of the covenants, but I don't know if somebody wants to make a motion or move forward. I guess, you certainly all have a right. There's 4 of us here, and it's probably 4 different thoughts and opinions. So that's just how I feel.
Well, with that said, I'm wondering if it doesn't behoove us to take a little bit more time on this and to just take a little bit more look at the history of the business park, see if this if this is the best way to do this, change, and then come back at it next week or next meeting at the end of the month. Does that sound like something you guys are willing to do? I mean, if we went at it with a motion right now, it'd be a 50-50 chance of what would happen with it. So I'm fine either way, but it sounds like, Kelly, you'd feel a lot better if we slowed this down a little bit, had a little bit more time to look at it, and look at some of the.
I would, and I obviously Tim's on the planning commission and felt comfortable moving ahead and has talked about it. I don't know, what Craig's thoughts are. Again, I understand how badly our community needs this, but I just think that we need to, before we change an ordinance, I want to have a little bit more time than just a couple days to kind of look at something or see what's in front of us. I feel like I need to dig into it a little bit more before I go and change something. And then we're going to be changing ordinances again here and zoning sometime in the very near future. So, I don't want us to have to go through the process a couple different times. I'd rather invest a little bit of time now, do our homework, do it the right way, and make sure that we all feel comfortable. But that's my comfort level.
Yeah, and let me just add that, I don't have any problem with that, Kelly, because I think, ordinance changes are things that should be done with good deliberation and thought going into them. They're meant to last, and and I've been around the business park activity for over 20 years and kind of have that historical perspective, and to me it becomes an easier decision. But I understand when you get this and you want to make sure you're making the right decision, that's good. I mean, that's the way it should be, that people should make the right decision based on the information. And so I don't think there's a urgency to, this is not a make or break for the EDA. I'm sure Brad probably wants to move on with his decision making, but this is a bigger decision maybe than just that. So I don't have a problem waiting to the next meeting to make this decision. And certainly Anton, who sits on the EDA, might have some additional comments to offer too. So
Okay. Craig, you okay with that?
Yeah, I like to bring it up at the next meeting. That gives us some time to, I like to see what those covenants are and how they compare to what the city's doing, and maybe looking at those would maybe help for the future of what we're doing up there. So we don't have to, keep making changes. I mean, I know that the business park started out very promising venture, and then it became something that we had to try to struggle with to, keep moving it along. And we've been doing that, and it's a good thing. But I think getting a better picture of what's happening here would be better. I think another week would give me more time to take a look at how this fits in with what's going on, and what lot. I'd like to know what lot this is going into. I mean, on a map, I see it's listed in here, but is this right along the Gunpla Trail, I'm assuming?
Yeah, Craig, I can answer that. It's, as you face the business park, where the Sweetgrass Road goes up to where the propane tanks are.
Mhm.
Then to the west of that, there are 3 lots that face the Gunflint Trail. This is the one in the middle. It's a small lot. It's like 0.88 acres. It's one of the smallest lots in the park.
Okay.
And I will provide Mike with the covenants and with a map of this lot.
Okay.
So he can share that with all of you. And I would welcome you and encourage you all to ask me any questions. I've heard a couple people mention the vision of the EDA about what we want in the business park. What we want in the business park is people that have some kind of commercial use and have been inquiring of us. No one has. Well, that's not true. We have one lot that's been sold. That is a contractor who was planning to move here, but that was before COVID. I don't know what his plans are now. Another one that is a contractor that is still planning to move here in 22. Some of their development will come in 21 and more in 22. I've been approached by 2 other people recently that have more contractor kind of businesses. We're not out looking for nonprofits. That isn't a vision. It's a response to the inquiries that are coming in.
So Mary, you can provide us with that information, get that information to Mike or to Hayden or someone to get sent out to the council for us to look over before the next meeting?
Yep, I'll send it when I leave this screen.
Great.
I'll do it now.
Well, thank you much.
Thanks,
We'll move on from this one, then we'll revisit this at our next meeting, so we can expect to see that on the agenda.
And so just a question of clarification then, will that be considered the second reading at your next meeting, or would that still have to go forward?
That would be the first then, yep.
Okay. I just up trying to wrap my head around the timeline.
Okay.
Well, thank you all very much for your time and for your thoughtfulness. I appreciate it.
Okay, thanks, Mary. Okay, so she's gonna pop out and we're gonna move to the next thing on the agenda.
Jay,
So-
before
go ahead.
before we do that, can I just give a short update on the zoning ordinance revision?
Sure.
We're in planning commission rather than kind of waiting till council reports. The planning commission did receive all the comments that were, given, presented to the council, and, started to have a conversation about the zoning ordinance revisions, and, realizing the number of responses that we received and the variety and thoughtfulness that people, put into those responses. It was pretty apparent that the planning commission was going to struggle in trying to come up with any kind of formulative way to deal with all of that, and in at least in our last meeting. So what we've decided to do was each of us try to take those comments, put together our concerns, questions, and possibility of any suggestions for amendments to the current draft, and bring those back to our next planning commission meeting, which would be for that first week of October, hopefully with the idea that we could produce a document at that time that we can agree on and bring that back to the council for consideration. So, I mean, there's a lot of work on the part of the planning commission to get something done, or we could just adopt or recommend the ordinance as it was presented before, but I don't think that that's going to happen. I think we're going to see some kind of modifications, changes as a result of the comments and conversation that commissioners are going to have at our next meeting. So
Okay, good.
that's kind of where we're at, and so maybe we'll see at the council a revised draft by our could be at our first meeting in October, might be the second meeting in October. I don't know. You know, kind of just depends on how it all comes together.
Okay, great. Thanks, Tim. Good to know that that's happening all across the structure there. So we're going to move along. So at our last meeting, we had Soil and Water Conservation District, Philip Larson, come and talk to us about the development of a rain garden at the base of 2nd Avenue East, which is between the Best Western Hotel there and the private home located right along the shore. And we have Philip back with us. We also have Scott Melhoff here from Holland Hospitality, who are the owner operators of the Best Western Superior there, and we have an agreement in front of us. So this agreement basically summarizes what we voted for at the last meeting, or that we indicated our support for, which is to say that the city of Grand Marais will partner with Soil and Water Conservation District and with Holland Hospitality for at least 10 years. There's a breakdown of all of the different requirements and responsibility of the three parties in the agreement here. There is a chunk there for the steward that I'd like to ask Scott about if there aren't any, if anyone else doesn't want to lead off with any questions. But maybe Phil, if you are able, why don't you break down a little bit of the agreement for us, and then we can go to questions, or we can ask Scott to what his interest in this and why he's willing to commit to partner with us for 10 years on a project like this would be. So who wants to go first? Philip, you want to go first? Oh, I think he froze up.
Take myself off mute. Am I working? Slowly? Yeah. I guess summary of the agreement is grant funds that Soil and Water Secured will pay for 75%, and then Scott and Holland Hospitality will contribute the other 25% of the funds to install and maintain it for the time specified. Only a portion of the 10 years can be counted towards that funding. But essentially, the important parts are the city agreed to take care of the sediment that washes into the garden and in a sediment catch, and then Holland Hospitality will maintain the planted area and the majority of the surface area of the garden. Will provide landscaping essentially for that area. And 10 years is what the grant requires of us to maintain these projects to ensure that taxpayer dollars are utilized in achieving the benefit that they were intended to do so. And there's any other things, important things, the city retains a lot of license for the right-of-way under that section 6. And yeah, we've used this agreement in the past with the city on rain garden projects with stewards like this.
And there really is no impact to the city's use of that property, apart from the fact that there'll be a rain garden on it. And it's probably not the best place to drive a city vehicle through because there'll be a rain garden built on it. But other than that, I believe that all the uses for that property will remain pretty much the same, and the right-of-way agreement isn't changed dramatically by this agreement.
Yeah, we try to find spots that work with everybody. So this one seems like it doesn't conflict with anybody, and it is a benefit to Best Western, and that's where it really all starts with. Is if there's a steward that wants to champion the project, we're happy to work hard to find funds and work with the city. You guys are great to consider our requests, and your time is valuable. So yeah.
So maybe that's a good segue to go over to Scott to talk a little bit about the development of the rain garden. Basically the only concern that I have is that you're in for 10 years, and you guys have been down there for quite a while at the Best Western, so I'm not super worried that you're gonna not be there for very long. But just yeah, so that's my main concern. What's your interest in this for 10 years, and why I'm assuming you're the one who brought this up to Soil and Water, or that you guys met in the middle on it for a project there. So go ahead. Oh, you're muted. Oh, still muted. Uh-oh, does he not have a microphone? Ruh-roh. Well, you may have to be our silent partner here. Shoot, he was sitting there for so long, and it didn't work. Well, maybe, I mean, does anyone, while we're working on this, does anyone have a question for Phil, or any questions about the agreement itself? And then we can, we got the tech guy.
Oh, can you hear me now?
So saved by the.
There's too many buttons on his computer. Can you tell all the LED lights? I don't have a computer because he uses all my money to build his own.
There you go. He saved the day. That's great.
Anyway, he's worked at the hotel this summer, so this is this kind of little fun thing. Okay, so so in the past we have had some issues because that area has become plugged from the runoff, and so we've had erosion that has gone over our sidewalk and washed out a huge hole right in front of the sidewalk. That's on our property. So that's one reason. Another reason, I have a lot of experience with rain gardens. At our other hotel, we have 10,000 square feet of rain gardens, and restored our entire shoreline. So I always say I know the difference between a good weed and a bad weed. So I have some experience taking care of this. And it'll look nice. You know, I know a lot of people that don't stay with us walk down that path to the lake and get to the lake that way, access the shoreline. But that's really probably it. I know it is a commitment, but you know, I'm into making things a little bit better, and a lot of the runoff is from our property. You know, there, of course, some from the credit union, very little, just a little bit from Craig at the gas station. But yes, what else would you like to ask? Does that answer your question?
That pretty much addresses my concerns. Does anyone else on the council have any questions for either Phil or for Scott?
No questions, but just so you guys know, I've been to their property at Detroit Lakes for 2 years. I was their leading agent. Minnesota has leadership conferences there that I've attended. Scott might be familiar with the name. And it's beautiful. So if I don't have any issue, I think if they do the same here as there, we'll be just fine.
Very cool.
Thanks, Kelly.
The reason I brought that little bit up about making sure you're in for 10 years is because I noticed when I was reading through the city's responsibilities, there's a catch in there that if the rain garden is removed before the 10 years is up, then that money gets paid back by the city, and that at least that's my understanding of what I read. So that's, you know, that's why to me that commitment is pretty important. But it sounds like you're totally in, and I know that Soil and Water, you guys have really worked hard to make sure that the projects you put in have been successful. Really grateful to have a steward with this project that has done stuff like this before and knows the importance of those commitments. So, you know, and knows the difference between a good weed and a bad weed, that kind of a situation. Does anybody have any other conversation for this one?
Jay, that part you're talking about on the contract says that if we remove it, basically,
Or if we remove it?
repay it. If it's removed for reasons outside of our control, then we do not have to repay it.
Okay.
If it's replaced by something that we feel provides the same treatment benefit, then we don't have to repay it.
Gotcha. Good clarification to make. Thank you for that. Does anybody have any strong feelings on this one? Any more questions for these guys?
Yeah, I would make a motion that we approve the agreement, and, you know, I think with the support that the streets department gave at our last meeting, you know, saying that they felt that this was completely within their capabilities to manage and take care of, you know, made it feel to me that they were, you know, on board comfortably with this and wasn't going to be anything really out of their normal workload to really provide the maintenance and care that the city would be required to provide.
Okay, so there's a motion. Is there a second for that?
I will second it.
Okay, motion and a second. Any further discussion on it? Hearing none, go through roll call vote. Counselor Swearingen, your vote?
Aye.
Counselor Schulte, your vote?
Aye.
Counselor Kennedy, your vote?
Aye.
And I'm an aye as well. That motion carries. So great. Thank you so much for coming on and waiting and representing the project for us. We look forward to seeing it get into the ground.
Thank you very much for your participation as well. I appreciate it.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
Thanks, Bill. Thanks, Scott. Appreciate it. Yep.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks for your time. Have a good night.
Good night. All right. So next thing that we've got on the agenda, Coronavirus Relief Fund report. So there's the CARES Act money that has come into the city, about $106,000, $106,230. The expenses of this are only for COVID-19 related expenses. The city has already spent over $23,000 of that in our response to COVID-19 within the city structures itself. And there are some more expenses that have not yet been completely paid out from that money. So that's where we'll start that conversation. Mike, I'll let you take it from there. And because there are very specific things we can use this money for, and there are specific things we can't. So can you break that down for us about what we can and can't, and then see what our next steps are?
I think Kim probably could.
Okay.
Just to point out, though, that what we're asking for here is you to approve the report that we're required to submit on a periodic basis, and there's really not anything else that we're asking for. But I'll let Kim address your question.
Go for it, Kim. She needs somebody to help her unmute too, huh?
Yeah, I need a kid too. So I kind of gave you the timeline. We sent in our form for the money, received it a month later on July 29th. This rules about what we can spend the money on have changed from when they first passed the law. So now they're allowing a few more things like staff time. Mostly here we've spent some stuff on the teleworking cameras and equipment for these meetings and hand sanitizer and switching hand air dryers over to paper, hand towels, and all of this kind of thing. So it's a monthly report that we have to do. It has to be submitted to the state within 10 working days of the end of the month. So you'll see this report come to you each month to be approved. And that's basically the rules say that the governing body has to approve it. Do you have any questions about what's in here?
It's pretty clear to me. Go ahead, Kelly.
I was going to make a motion to accept the report. I'm getting very familiar with this and my job aspects. So I didn't have any questions, and I would make a motion to approve the report if no one else has questions.
All right. Well, there's a motion. If there's questions, we can deal with it if you know, after there's a second or not. Somebody want to second that?
I'll second the report.
Okay. There's a motion and a second. Now, any further conversation or any further questions? Hearing none, we'll take that to a vote. So, Councilor Swearingen, your vote.
Aye.
Councilor Schulte, your vote.
Aye.
Councilor Kennedy, your vote.
Aye.
And I am an aye as well. So the report passes. Thank you, Kim, for explaining that little bit to us. Now we can move on to to the resolution 2020-09. So this is the preliminary levy. So keeping in mind that as per our conversations previously, the council's conversations previously, in regards to setting a preliminary levy, once the preliminary levy is set, we cannot increase the levy beyond that level, but we can decrease it. So as we are standing right now, we're looking at a property tax levy of $1,012,331.39 for the year of 2021, which is a 4.02% increase over 2020. That is what is being proposed for the preliminary levy. That number cannot be exceeded, but can be lessened. Is there any discussion about that? Or Mike, do you have anything additional to add to it, Mike or Kim?
I just want to point out the major change between when you spent some time going through the budget with the department heads and now is not anything that you looked at with them, but just an increase of $15,000 in the line item that is called special projects on the draft budget and spending history. So it was $115,000 in 2020. It's $130,000 in 2021. That's partially to respond to your request to be slightly more conservative in our views. So that is adding cushion into our spending side of things, just in case the revenues don't show up where we expect them to. Our response to revenues shortfalls will remain spending less money in that special project side line item, spending less money on capital projects, and then using reserves kind of in that order. So I think that at a 4% number, that gives us room to continue to study the budget for the next few months, to meet with a couple more department heads that you still need to sit down and talk to, and to look at our capital improvement plan and our 3-year projection. And I think with that 4% number, that we still have the ability to go through those workshops and adjust as needed and still be good in December.
I have just a couple questions, guys, if I can. Do we know what our health insurance, have we heard anything on that? And you don't have to give me a number here, but I'd just like to know if maybe we've got something back.
I did ask them today, and he said we probably won't know until October.
Okay. And any idea where our park or liquor store revenue may have come in for August preliminary? I think I know for the park, we were still down about 60,000 over last year, but we were gaining ground. We were 100,000 back in what, May or June? Just
Mhm.
wondering there what August may have looked like and what September reservations may be.
So August came in even with last year, so we're still 60,000 down.
Okay.
Reservations are still good through September. I didn't look at the comparison for the liquor store. I know it came in less. Do you know the actual number, Mike?
It's about 30,000 down in August, which is about 12%. So when we looked at it at our budget workshop, we were imagining it to be 10%, and it was just a little bit more than that.
We need Canadians to come back.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that'd be great. I think those are all really good points, Kelly. Mike and Kim, do you feel like this 4% gives us enough flexibility to deal with a worst case scenario, kind of, as far as, you know, if we can't recover anymore on those numbers and things are, you know, the bottom just kind of falls out, that kind of a situation?
It's not, I mean, the bottom is falling out this year, right? When we're doing our planning for next year, we're planning based on the idea that we know how to operate the rec park and that it's still highly in demand. And that even if the liquor store continues to perform at this level, it's not the bottom falling out, and it's something that we can adjust. And I think the most important point that I want to reiterate is the property tax levy is about 10% of our budget revenue side. So it's not the only tool that we would use to adjust to, you know, catastrophic financial situation next year, which I think kind of removes some of the risk associated with picking the right number at this time. So I'm certainly comfortable at 4%, and I feel pretty confident that we'll be able to shave that number down if you desire to.
Okay, great. That's really my concern is that we're making sure that we can cover it, you know, if there's more bad things that keep coming. So it's reassuring to hear that. Any other comments on the preliminary levy conversation?
I would make a motion then that we adopt resolution 2020-09, setting our preliminary levy at the 1,012,000.
331.39.
That's it.
I would second that.
Okay, motion and a second. Any further discussion? I'd like to thank all of our department heads for going through the exercise this year with a little bit of a different curve to it. But we've got people who are all helping us watch the bottom line, so that's really nice to know. All right, any other conversation? Hearing none, roll call vote. Counselor Swearingen, your vote.
Aye.
Counselor Schulte, your vote.
Aye.
Counselor Kennedy, your vote.
Aye.
And I am an aye as well. The preliminary budget is set. So thank you much for that. All right, so the next thing that we've got is a liquor license renewal. And you have an updated list of them that are that was sent out today via email. That includes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 different 10 different license requests, from all the way from full liquor licenses to off-sale beer. Unless you have an issue with that, we can pass all of those together with one motion, I do believe, if we are so inclined to do so.
I'd make that motion to approve the liquor licenses as presented.
All right, so there's a motion. Is there a second?
I will second.
Okay, there's a motion and a second. Any further discussion on this? Hearing none. Counselor Swearingen, your vote.
Aye.
Counselor Schulte, your vote.
Aye.
Counselor Kennedy.
Craig
your
should
vote?
probably not vote
Oh, I
on this since he's one of the licensees.
You're right.
I was wondering about that.
Yeah, I didn't vote last year, or yeah, last time, I remember that.
Okay, so you abstain then, I bet.
I am abstaining from this vote.
Okay. And then Counselor Kennedy, your vote?
Aye.
And then I'm an aye as well. So the liquor license requests renewals have been passed on. So we can get rid of that tab. And so the last thing that we have, we said I suggested that we put the women's vote activity for the library lawn on. So basically all we need to do is indicate our support for this or not. So does anybody have a strong feeling about this?
Do we need to make a motion for it? They're applying for a permit, is that correct?
Mm-hmm.
So I will motion to make a motion to approve this permit that will go obviously tomorrow, September 10th through Sunday, September 13th.
Cool. Is there a second for that?
I'll second that.
Okay, motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none. Man, it's going to be so nice when I can just say all in favor. Counselor Swearingen, your vote?
Aye.
Counselor Schulte, your vote?
Aye.
Counselor Kennedy, your vote?
Aye.
And I'm an aye as well. That motion carries. Thank you much. All right, so let's go to council and staff reports unless you have something else. Tim, you can do your report, or we can talk about that Passion Pit Committee for your report, but we'll start with Kelly. So what do you have, Kelly?
I don't have anything. It's been quiet, sort of. Yeah.
It's been quiet in some areas, very noisy in others. All right, Tim, yours?
Yeah, all I really have is the county's request to have city appoint somebody to the Passion Pit Task Force. Boy, what a name, huh?
There you go. Passion Pit Task Force.
Hey, Kelly said she had experience at this, so.
Well, is that something, that's probably something that we have, do we have to do motions for that thing? For that sort of a thing? Or can we just appoint somebody?
If everybody's head is nodding, then that's good enough for me. I don't think the county's going to care one way or the other, but I think they wanted something a little more official than I'd be interested, but Kelly made last time. So if everybody else says, yes, that's a good idea, that's probably enough.
Kelly, if you're in for it, then I'm in favor of that too. So
yeah, I'm good for that. I'm good for that too.
I would be happy to if you guys are all okay with that.
Okay. Craig's nodding his head a little bit.
Sounds good to me.
All right. Thanks, Kelly.
Yep.
It's a great group of people. I've been sitting in on some of their conversations as they've been trying to brainstorm what this could look like, and it's a really great group of people. So that'll be a lot of fun. I think you guys will have a good time working on that. So
good. Thank you guys very much.
All right. Anything else, Tim?
That's it. No, thank you.
Okay. Craig, what do you got?
I don't have anything.
All right. So let me see what I've got. I just have a couple of updates here. The library, this is the time of the year that the library reviews its strategic plan. So today I had a phone call with Amanda St. John, the director there, to discuss what our plans are with the strategic plan. At our last library board meeting, the library board discussed this and discussed the impacts of the COVID pandemic on the strategic plan and how we intended to change the strategic plan. So our conversation between Amanda and I was basically saying, all right, we're going to have a really involved conversation, or a more involved conversation with the library board about this again, to make sure that we understand the marching orders moving forward with the strategic plan. So I think that's the right place to be with that. The library is working on expanding its services as much as it can, with still remaining a safe facility. So we can expect to see some changes coming in services available. but still very cautiously. Just today, right before this meeting, I was on a phone call for the Joint Powers racial equity conversation. So there's been a conversation started between all the members of the Joint Powers, which is the tribe, the county, the city, the hospital, and the school board. This effort is to identify ways that can be that these different joint powers can acknowledge and commit to work for racial equity in our communities and in our particular places of influence. So that's that process is going to be ongoing. They're going to look into the drafting of a land acknowledgement statement for use by the joint powers, and also perhaps a mission statement or some kind of a commitment statement. So those things are still very far off, but there is some good work being done there in that group. So that's something that we should keep our eyes going for. I've been attending some Zoom calls about for a group that works on rural arts and culture, and that's been really interesting to hear how other communities are working to be innovative in creating spaces for people to kind of decompress safely through art through the whole pandemic situation. And I don't have any particular examples of that would be a great fit for Grand Marais, but it does definitely seem like something that we would find happening in Grand Marais too. So that's pretty interesting. I've had a couple of Zoom calls as well with some organizations that have been asking questions about our climate action plan, and that's something that I know for the pandemic period has gotten put a little bit on the back burner, but we're still working on implementing some of these more energy efficient guidelines. I know that the garbage thing has kind of gotten blown up a little bit because of all the takeout containers, but that's definitely still something we need to keep on our radars for things to be planning for in the future. And I also just read that the BWCA was just designated just recently a dark sky sanctuary, which is one of 13 in the country, which is pretty cool, and putting us in a unique position to be very easily adopted as a dark sky city. So I'm going to start bringing this up more because I think that it's really important. That I think that would be a really great thing for Grand Marais to get. Once the highway is done being built, I think that would be kind of low-hanging fruit for us. So that's all I have. Does anybody else have anything? No?